Our Hebrew Scriptures reading this morning is from the Book of Ecclesiastes, beginning at chapter 3, verse 1. Legend tells us that Solomon wrote 3 books of the Bible as we have them now, that he wrote the Song of Songs when he was young and lusty, that he wrote Proverbs when he was middle-aged and sober-minded and thinking about educating the young, and that he wrote Ecclesiastes in his old age as death approached and the wisdom of his years was upon him. Beginning at chapter 3, verse 1. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. For everything there is a season. How many of you remember Jill and Kevin's big day? I'll describe it. Maybe it'll refresh your memory. This was the name of a video that appeared on YouTube in the summer of 2009, and it quickly went viral. It depicted a large wedding party dancing down the aisle of a church and provide an incredibly festive opening to Jill and Kevin's marriage ceremony. Is it ringing a bell now? Okay. And there is something so joyous about it. There is something, even though it's choreographed, so spontaneous and beautiful. And since then, there have been countless other videos somewhat like that have appeared. A dance at the reception by the bride and groom, or by the bride and her dad, or by 2 grooms, or by 2 brides. Another dance number that takes place trailing behind an open hatchback as a prelude to a big public proposal of marriage. We dance when we're happy. We dance when we're celebrating. We dance when we want to be reminded that we are alive. Dancing is a celebration of life. For everything there is a season, and that includes a time to dance. Not far from the westernmost stretch of Interstate 80, in the Potrero Hill district of San Francisco, you will find St. Gregory of Nyssa Episcopal Church. St. Gregory's has many vibrant ministries to the neighborhood, including their vital and faithful worship, study groups, and a large and somewhat famous food distribution network to feed the hungry. But St. Gregory's is also known for its beautiful and enormous mural of the saints. It fills the walls on every side of the sanctuary's enormous rotunda. According to the church website, the huge mural is actually an icon. An icon is traditionally understood to be art that provides a window to the holy. The people of St. Gregory see this icon as a monumental, surprising, and powerful statement of faith for the ages, created by artist Mark Dukes along with the people of St. Gregory's. Completed in 2009, it wraps around the entire church rotunda, showing 90 larger-than-life saints, 4 animals, stars, moons, suns, and a 12-foot-tall dancing Christ. Did I mention that the saints are all dancing. They are all holding hands, and they seem to be in the middle of this wonderful dance all around the church. Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Charles Wesley, who wrote the lyrics to our first hymn this morning, Love Divine, All Love Excelling, taken from the Book of Revelation. Bishop Desmond Tutu. Now, notice not all the saints are Episcopalians. In fact, not all the saints are Christian. Scholar and rabbi Joshua Heschel, Abraham Joshua Heschel is there, and schoolgirl writer martyr Anne Frank, who died in Bergen-Belsen concentration camp while still a teenager. One of the co-founders of St. Gregory's, named Richard Fabian, explains, "The identities of the saints portrayed may surprise some, but for years, St. Gregory's Church has fostered a broad idea of sainthood. Our idea of sainthood comes both from the Bible and from Gregory's writing. The Hebrew concept of holiness originally had no moral content. It simply meant having God's stamp on you, being marked and set apart as God's own. As the Bible sees it, saints and sinners are the same people. We, and this is still Mr. Fabian, we celebrate those whose lives show God at work, building a deep character to match the godlike image which stamps them as God's own from the start. Of course, God works with more than Christians, and more than Christians are saints. And all the saints are dancing, every one. This morning's passage from the Hebrew Scriptures reminds us that there is, in fact, a time for dancing. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. It might be a little surprising that we're talking about dancing during our celebration of All Saints. Every year when this day comes around, I notice that pervasive idea that the word saint is a synonym for verifiably good Christians, it's hard to shake. Even though Paul in the New Testament makes it clear that sainthood is more about community than perfection. So here's my annual reminder that you are, each and every one of you, saints of God, many of you saints of the church, and I am too. And it's not because of anything wonderful we've done. It's just because God drew us one way or another into the fellowship of followers of Jesus. But I find myself drawn to Gregory of Nyssa's compelling understanding of saint. Gregory lived in the 4th century, and he believed that everyone, no matter their faith upbringing, had the capacity to move closer to God. Because everyone is made by God, in God's own image and likeness. We can see little glimpses of that in every human life. We Christians believe that Jesus showed it fully, beautifully, and intensely. By Gregory's reckoning, we need to be careful who we exclude from our notions of the saints. God's work of renewing and restoring everything, as Sue was reading this morning, new heaven, new earth, no more tears, new us. That work is God's to do, and God gets to decide when and where and who and how. What if we included among the saints every person, of all religions and of no religion? What if we allowed for the possibility that God is working God's will in ways we can't begin to imagine? What if, in the soul work, for example, of painting, an artist might draw closer to God? What if, in figuring out how to make something work more efficiently or powerfully, an engineer approaches the heart of our Creator God? What if, in laughing or singing or dancing, we were able to understand just a tiny bubble of the joy and purpose God has wanted for us from the beginning of creation? For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to mourn and a time to dance. The dancing saints of St. Gregory's make me wonder whether sainthood isn't simply about being the most authentically who we are, living into who God created us to be. This seems to me to be the pathway to joy and satisfaction, certainly, but even possibly to holiness. And hopefully when we come face to face with God, whether that's a great surprise to us or something we've expected all along, God can say, "Well done, good and faithful servant," not because we won the medal for best Christian of all time, but because we've spent our lives becoming truly and authentically who God created us to be. Unique and amazing creations of our amazing God. All Saints marks a celebration and remembrance of the saints of our lives. The parenting saints, the working saints, the singing saints, the loving saints, the spouse saints, the coaching saints, the cooking saints, the serving saints, the child saints, the healing saints, the studying saints, the protecting saints, and yes, even the dancing saints. It's a day to celebrate their lives with gratitude and with prayers that we will continue to grow, no matter our age or stage in life, into exactly the saints God calls us to be. Thanks be to God. Amen.